Hello and welcome to Future of Film's Virtual Production Revolution, our special show on the future of filmmaking and the pioneers who are making virtual production a reality. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our supporters who have made this series possible. Epic Games and Unreal Engine, Brompton Technology, and Garden Studios in London, whose incredible virtual production stage I am now sat on. So that just leaves me to say thank you again for listening and watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Virtual Production Revolution. When was the first time you discovered virtual production?
I discovered virtual production maybe 3-4 years ago, but sort of my career path wasn't directly tied to virtual production up to that point. My first career was a dentist. I graduated dentistry and worked for a number of years, and I decided to pursue my passion. So I went back to film, and we started a film production company, like a traditional feature/documentary film company with two of my friends, and we did that for a number of years. I was producing, I was directing short films, and I sort of pursued my passion doing sci-fi films. So that's when things started picking up for me. I did this thing called the Akira project, which went viral, which got me representation, and that's sort of when I decided to focus on writing, directing sci-fi solely. And this career path, led me to more bigger things and to crazier ideas, I'd say. And that's when I started doing Babiru with two of my friends from Montreal, Fred and Ivan, who created the sort of world for Babiru. And we had this crazy idea of like pitching this as a web series back in the day. But obviously the world is so big and so ambitious that it was very hard to get financing for that. And that is when these sort of small bits of video game films came out at the same time, like very early. I think Unreal 4 wasn't even out back then, or like very early on. And the idea to do something in that world, to create a world that would have the scope and scale of Babiru within virtual production using the Unreal Engine started sort of picking up. And I think that was 2017. So we tried to get financing. It was still hard. Then Epic came on board. So that sort of allowed everything to move on. And that was only in 2020. So the sort of development process, we had the series written. We had, we had plans on how to make a short initially, like a very contained short as a proof of concept. But then now this short is becoming a full-on pilot for the series. So that is, sort of the life of this project. And my first foray into virtual production really is this project I'm working on now.
So very quickly, the Akira project. What an exciting ambition and project to do. What was so many people have talked about doing a live action Akira, and you just went ahead and did that. Just tell me a little bit about how that came about, because it's a really cool project.
Yeah, so this project was sort of a pastime for me. Back in those days, I was still being a dentist. I was running this production company with my friends, and I was also running a post-production company / camera rental company with the same partners. So I was in charge of post-production, and I was doing a lot of post-production with clients. And on the side, I picked up some skills, and I always loved Akira. Akira was the thing that pushed me to want to be a filmmaker. And the idea to do something in that world was always, a dream for me. And I kept seeing these live action versions coming in and out of Hollywood with, some bad and some terrible ideas being sort of pushed into those versions. And I just wanted to do something basically to prove that it could be done in a certain way, that would be true to what the story was, what the spirit of the manga was. And so I did it. And I think that's sort of the spirit of a lot of my projects, is that I think something should be done because I love it, because it's cool, because the story needs to be told, and I don't think too much about it, and I do it, which is what sort of brought me to do Akira. And I think if I had known how hard that was going to be in terms of creating that project, maybe things would have been different. But I sort of plunged headfirst, and we sort of assembled a team of international artists. We launched a Indiegogo campaign. So we found some money online, but most importantly, we found people who wanted to help us. And I used sort of my film connections from Montreal in the industry to put together a crew to shoot the live action. And over the course of about 2 years, we did post-production. We did a number of shots that were very sort of big and expensive, but on a no budget sort of level. And all of these artists were very involved. They loved Akira as much as I did, and that's how we ended up creating this thing. So I'm very proud of that project still. Like it's been a number of years now, but it's still one of my cherished memories from sort of filmmaking. And I think that's what triggered me to do bigger things and to sort of pursue this sci-fi directing career I'm on right now.
Tell me a bit more about Babaru, because you said it's a very expansive world. It's
expansive and expensive, like both. It's both. Yeah.
The two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so you had. Is this a world that you have developed yourself?
It is a world that is very close to me. So my love in sort of sci-fi realm, it has always been sort of hard sci-fi cyberpunk stuff. Akira being sort of the epitome of cyberpunk, and the world of Babaru was created by Fred Rumbo and Ivan Chantara, so two artists from Montreal. And the world, when I saw the concept art pop online, I read an article about it on some blog, really spoke to me, and I sort of recognized the influences of the world, which was directly pulled from Ghost in the Shell, from Akira, from Blame, all like mangas that I loved as a kid. So I reached out to Fred and Ivan, and we went to have a beer. We sort of discussed our background, and they're the same age as me. They love the same things as me, and I really could sort of connect with them on that level. And that is how we decided to work together. Because the concept arts were online for a number of years. They were approached by a few producers wanting to do something. But I think they trusted me because I knew the world that they were building, like I understood it, and we wanted to do the same thing. And that is sort of a extreme cyberpunk world where humans have disappeared, and the only things that we've left behind are the AIs that we've built. But they're still functioning on human programming, and they're still doing the things we told them to do, and building the society that they now inhabit, and we're following them, two of them at least, sort of trying to survive in this crazy society. So it's sort of a post-human show about humanity. So we want to talk about things that are close to society right now, that are close to us, but we want to sort of portray this in this not this topic, but this futuristic cyberpunk world. And it's it's a series full of action, full of the world is incredible. We've built like very big environments, very big sets that I could never have done in live action, and I basically can do all of the wet dreams of my childhood in this project. Like I can create the crazy robots. I can create the monsters that I've always wanted. I can basically have complicated action sequences, complicated one-shot sequences that I could never sort of achieve in real life unless you have $40-50 million. So all these things are very exciting, and it's building into the story that's written by Philip Gillat, who did Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix. And we both again love the same type of stuff, and he's inputting a lot of comedy, a lot of humor, a lot of heart into a hard sci-fi story. So it's all coming together very well. I've been working on this for almost 2 years now, and we're pretty much ready to release by the end of the year if everything goes well.
Well, it sounds incredible and very exciting and rich and expansive. But let's get specific, because it's real-time animation, which is allowing you to realize this. Because if you were to do this traditionally, it would just be, you know, millions and millions of dollars, right? So
absolutely.
You're trained as a filmmaker. Have you had to retrain working with, I don't know, we're calling it virtual production or real-time animation? It feels like it's the same piece, but tell me your experience.
So yes, absolutely. My background is very much traditional filmmaking. We shot film in film school. I edited in the Steenbeck for a number of years. You know, my first few projects were still shot in film, and the transition towards this world has not been instant. I grew into the CG heavy world of sci-fi filmmaking. So I learned the ropes doing projects prior to doing Babaru. I don't think that jumping straight into Babaru from a traditional filmmaking background is an easy step. I think you gotta learn a few things, or you gotta surround yourself with a team that knows what they're doing. So the answer to your question is yes. There's been a lot of adjustments. There's a few steps that are still crucial to filmmaking, which is everything in pre-production. We before I even went to hire to talk to people, I sat down with Philip and we hashed out a series overview. We wrote the pilot script. We spent months on just story. So these steps don't really change. We storyboarded pretty much everything, which also helped a lot in terms of shooting. But then it's the next few steps that were different. We had to create basically the environment at the same time as we were going to do mocap. So the mocap stage was still traditional, but was very different. Like I had never shot mocap before, and obviously this is a very crucial step for the rest of the project, because you have to envision pretty much the entire project at the mocap stage and making sure that it's going to fit the story. So there's been a bit of a learning curve there. I should have shot more things. I should have covered specific things I needed, but I still saw that from a live action standpoint. So I was wasting time, for example, trying to get angles on the mocap, while I could have shot a more complete sequence with just one sequence and then create those angles later on. So these steps were not something that I had done before. So obviously lots of learning involved and time. And I think the big hurdle still, even though virtual production / real-time animation is, I believe, the future, it's still in its infancy. It's still, we're still sort of pioneers to the space. There's lots of people more and more jumping on it, but there are still technical challenges. There are steps that are still buggy, that are involved in terms of technically challenging stuff. So we had to learn how things worked in Unreal Engine. Some stuff worked super well, some stuff didn't work that well, and some bugs came out of nowhere that we had to deal with, pushing us back a couple of weeks in production. So all of these things are part of the learning curve. But again, that's my spirit of filmmaking is you gotta try something new. You gotta sort of jump into the void and hope that you're gonna figure it out. So that's what we're doing.
Tell me about your team. How many people are working on this, and what kind of different roles do you all take?
Right.
You're the director, right?
Yes, I'm the director. I'm producing on as well. The team at the core of it is very similar to sort of a live action post-production team. So there's no like magical positions, except for a few things that are specific. So we have an Unreal technical artist who's crucial for running the engine, making sure that the project is viable from a technical standpoint, and making sure that we optimize things into Unreal. We have a number of environmental artists modeling, creating the environments in the world. So I started this project with very much a small team, basically the people around me. So I had the VFX supervisor to supervise sort of the visual look dev type of stuff. I had a compositor. I had the Unreal technical artist, and I had a few modelers creating the assets, creating the robots, the monsters, and all these different assets we would need. But I worked with that for about a year. And when we finally had the assets, we finally had the sort of the base, I got in touch with Mathematics Studios. They're a VFX house in France that I've always admired. And they're also excited about virtual production. They're also, jumping into the space as we speak, literally at the same time as me. So it was a perfect fit, perfect timing. So they also came on board. They brought in a number of other artists, artistic directors, modelers, particle effects, like lighting artists. So all of these people came on board, refined the project, added, layers of creative stuff on top of what I had built. And this is a fairly big team now. Like, I think overall, everybody that was involved from the beginning to the end of this project is probably going to be around 35 to 40 people from beginning to end, maybe even more. But now at this step, it's mostly people involved in the actual virtual production side of things. So I have 4 or 5 modelers. I have 2 environmental artists. I have an Unreal technical artist. I have my animation supervisor plus 3 animators. I have my VFX supervisor, and waiting on the IL is basically everybody else that are going to come in once the virtual stuff is done, which is standard stuff: sound designer, musician, compers, colorist, and and the post stuff. So it's a fairly involved team. Some people, virtual production allows you to work either with a team like myself, or you can do a lot of stuff yourself if you're proficient in Unreal, if you're proficient in animation and in 3D. So I'm not that technical in terms of creating the actual assets. So I'd rather work with a team. It's faster for me. But some people work not by themselves, but like a very small team with still amazing results, because that's what the technology allows.
Amazing. So you didn't mention like a cinematographer or a production designer.
Sorry, I forgot that bit. Absolutely. I approached this project with a dear friend of mine, Simran Dewan. He shot my 2-3 latest projects, and we approached this from a very standard filmmaking type of point of view. So we storyboarded everything together. We defined a shot list together. He was present on the mocap days, so we directed mocap together in terms of making sure we would capture things that we would need from just a story perspective and from a visual perspective. And going forward, he was involved in creating some of the cameras for me. So this was, if you want to go back to things I had to learn, creating cameras was not something I thought was going to take that long. I thought that we would shoot most of our angles in mocap and just sort of edit that into Unreal and get those cameras already baked in. But it wasn't the case. We had to sort of sit down, recreate a lot of the cameras, and create new cameras with keyframing. We tried the virtual camera way, which using an iPad and using a live link. It's just it was still not perfect. It didn't give us exactly what we wanted, and for small sort of handheld sequences it would work, but for long, complicated tracking shots it would not work. It would still be buggy. So those aspects we learned on the as we went, and we had to sort of sit down, reconvene, and then we spent over 15 days doing only cameras with Dane, an amazing artist from the UK, and he He just created lots of the cameras for me. I had a friend here who actually sit down next to me, and we also did a number of days. So all in all, it was about 15 days of only camera work, which was not a step I had expected to take that long. So most definitely that this was very involved, but I think it's giving this project the level of quality I want. I don't want to be doing a video game cutscene, which unfortunately still I think is plaguing the space, because Unreal allows you to do anything you want, and it's very easy to sort of move the camera from super high and dive into your character and have these very extreme camera moves, or the camera's dulling all the time as the characters are speaking to each other. But I wanted to approach this from a more traditional perspective, have realistic camera moves that we could actually do in real life. And that's the approach we took in the project, with some flair, obviously, because virtual cameras allow you for crazier stuff. But we took our time, did the cameras in a live action way. So long story short, it took us a long time, and my DP was very involved in the project, and my camera artists, again, huge lifesavers. I think they're the ones who sort of created a lot of the feel and tone for the project with the virtual cameras.
That's really interesting. I think it's really interesting. You're taking a more classical filmmaking approach to this medium, but then you still have to create all of these. You have to problem solve a lot, and the virtual cameras you created, is that something which then you can store and use for later projects? What happens to them afterwards? Is that just like a piece of IP effectively for you?
There is some IP involved in there, because we did about 6 months of R&D to get the look of the project before we went to full production. So what I did is I again took my traditional background. I've always shot with these set of lenses, Japanese anamorphics that I love. And what we did is we went in studio, we shot the full distortion charts, flare charts, and bokeh focus pull to sort of give us the real artifacts, the real way these lenses would interact with light, with objects in the frame. And my VFX supervisor Shervin took these tests that we did and sort of recreated a comping solution for these lenses. And now we're applying that comp solution, recreating it into Unreal and recreating it into the project. So there's a lot of R&D work that we want to put into this project that can give this sort of an edge over just a standard frame coming straight out from Unreal. So there is some IP involved. It's nothing drastic or unheard of, because we took a lot of inspiration from Toy Story, the latest one, Toy Story 4. They basically did the same thing using Cook anamorphics, but not in a real-time pipeline. So they took the lenses and recreated the look of the lenses in Toy Story 4. So I remember watching this film and being amazed at the way that the flares would look so real, the bokeh would look very specifically Cook. So we sort of took that approach, but applied it into our project with the real-time pipeline. And so the idea is to really have a unique look coming out for this project that is specific to this project. And obviously, if this look works, I'm gonna reuse it for other projects, because I think I've shot 90% of my films with these lenses. So I'm sort of taking that approach again for this and bringing what I can from the real world to the Unreal world.
Very, very cool. And talking about IP, you've obviously also created all of the assets.
Yeah.
Which the environments and characters. Do you have a plan for those as well after this project, or are you just thinking just purely about the first season so far?
there are multiple avenues for this project. Obviously, the assets took us a very long time to create, both in terms of just creating the concept art for all of the characters, all of the environments, but also in terms of creating the actual 3D assets. So they're like high quality film level assets that we can reuse for either film, for video games. The metaverse is something I think I'm very excited about in terms of where the space is going. So there is obviously a very direct transition from this project into, for example, a video game, or into AR or VR. Like it's very easily transposable. So there is a possibility, but we're still a very small team, and we're focusing on creating the series, like making the series work. And I think once we get the series financed, we go to production, and if everything goes well, there's lots of possibilities on what to do with the assets further on. So that is something I'm thinking about, but I'm not sort of actively pursuing, because there's only so much time in a day. But obviously, that is a space I think that's going to see a lot of revolution in that way. The ability to reuse the assets for other mediums, or swapping assets. For example, you're shooting something, you're not satisfied with one of the characters, you could simply come back later on and swap the character for a better version of it. Things like that are very exciting in terms of creating a very polished project, and having access to this IP, to these assets for future projects.
Yeah, amazing for an independent company, production company, to have that, because in a world, going slightly off not too off topic, but in a world where independent producers are able to sell a lot of stuff to platforms, not always able to realize an upside to a project as well. So that's very interesting, and that's very, very exciting aspects, I think, of technology.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to thank Epic first for allowing this to happen. This is really, they're an exciting company that believes in exciting stuff that don't exist yet. So they have the vision for this type of stuff, because we got turned down by a number of other bigger companies before Epic came on board. And regarding the IP situation, it is something we're very excited about, because Nivan and Fred, for a number of years, said no to traditional film studios coming in and just wanting to buy out the entire IP and do whatever it is that they were going to do with it. So us keeping the IP and still being allowed to create this project is a huge plus for us. And having the IP, having the project to show to potential buyers, and it'll give us the edge of controlling our destiny a bit more, because you're not at the mercy of just executives that don't like what you do, or that don't have the same vision as you. So for independent filmmakers, I think it is the way forward. Creating your own IP, creating your own projects with little means, and then coming at the table with something fully fleshed out that can feel tangible, I think is going to give us a bigger voice at the table.
How have you found the new creative process of real-time animation? Is it something you want to continue with your work as a filmmaker? What are the pros and cons?
The answer is absolutely, with a caveat. So I think the entire virtual production process for me is very freeing. It gives me the ability as a filmmaker to sort of execute a vision that is not possible otherwise. It really, I think that is the key takeaway for me, is that I can achieve the dreams I have, the images that pop in my head. I can explain that to an artist, and he can create it, and we can actually see it come to life. So that is very, very exciting for me. I've had a number of occasions where I was on set, and I'd be like, this is what I want. And people would look at me and say, that's impossible. And I realized that is impossible in the live action world, unless you're James Cameron. So the virtual production really is sort of a game changer for me in that way. So I will definitely pursue things. And the space right now is becoming super heated. There's like lots of small, big companies getting involved more and more. The Mandalorian just being one example, but there are entire series now being done in Unreal that are going to come out. So I think once this space matures, there's going to be just more artists that know what they're doing in this space, which brings me to my caveat. So right now we're still early adopters, we're still pioneers, and we're still learning. So the technical challenges have been numerous, and we had consequences from these technical challenges. Like we lost months of work. We had to go back and redo cameras because of a bug, or like rather a way that Unreal Engine behaved with scenes and sub scenes and reusing characters. So we didn't know that was the case, and then we lost half of our cameras that we had to redo, which set us back 2 months in terms of production. So these technical challenges I could have done without, and it was very frustrating, to be very honest. Like, it was not something I wanted to deal with as a filmmaker, because it sort of stops you from being creative, but you have to deal with these things. And I think it's part of the game. It's part of the way that this space is growing. So everybody involved understands that. Like, we're frustrated, but we understand that we gotta find solutions, and then next time it won't happen again. So this is sort of the biggest caveat for me, is that you have to be ready to feel some pain as you create these things, but the result and what it allows you to do is so game changing that I'm very much willing to do this step that's painful, and then next time it'll be less painful, and you'll have more people that know what they're doing in this space. And I think that is something I can see. Like, there's a hunger for specialists in the virtual production space, and people now are just learning themselves how to operate within Unreal, creating these things, how to become better Unreal technical artists. And within a couple of years, you'll have enough people to work on major projects. So once we reach that point, the caveat may disappear, and it'll become just a more fluid process.
We've talked on this show quite a lot about live action and virtual production, and how real-time tools can help can flow into the live action workflow. Are you looking to go back into live action? And if so, do you see you're going to be taking some of these tools and processes with you?
Absolutely. I still love live action. I still think there's a place for live action. There's a place and time when you don't need virtual production, and you just you need 2 actors, a camera, and like an intimate setting. I don't think that a VP will replace everything. I think I will bring back virtual production onto specific projects that again need the type of skill, scope, or efficiency that real-time allows you. And yeah, this is very much, I think, a hybrid world that's going to happen in front of our eyes. And my next projects are, there's a full-on real-time animation working with metahumans that I want to embark on. That's going to be another huge challenge. But there's also another feature film I wanted to do that would involve virtual production on set with LEDs that will allow us to create this world in front of behind the actors rather. And the technology again is maturing in that way. Like it's becoming very very seamless. Like some stuff now I'm looking at and I'm not sure that they were virtual production. So that is a very good sign that things are happening at a very fast pace in terms of technology. So absolutely, I think the future 4 or 5 years will see lots of indie filmmakers jumping into this space, lots of bigger studios jumping into this space, and I want to be part of that wave.
Well, you already are.
Yeah,
which is very exciting. What do you think the biggest challenges are for real-time animation or virtual production? For example, one challenge I think is for real-time animation is that the style you want to move away from it looking like a game cutscene,
Mm-hmm.
something different, which with the work you're doing, you're clearly addressing that. But yeah, what would you say are the biggest challenges it needs to overcome as an art form?
I think as an art form, and without disrespecting game artists, because they do a tremendous work for the industry that they're in. But I think more and more film people are stepping into this world, and I think we're bringing in a different type of vision, a different type of working in the space. And I think the merging of the game artists with the film artists are going to be what is going to set this space, to a higher level, because it's a hybrid. I have on my team, I have people who have been, working in the game industry for years, who are now doing film stuff, and I have film people who have never touched Unreal before that are working in Unreal, and both of these people are excited to do this. So I think the merging of these artists and sort of the knowledge being passed from one another will create this new space. And it's right now it's a lack of artists knowing the space that is, I think, still holding things back a little bit, because we just don't, like in Montreal right now, there is a shortage of artists already for the game industry. So you're basically relying on game people to work in virtual production, but they don't exist because they're in studios. So creating these new artists is, I think, one of the main hurdles of the space. And the second thing that I realize now is that virtual production does not take away all of the traditional hurdles of creating a film. All of the story aspects, the camera aspects. You got to think about your shots. You got to think about story, but you also, if you're going to create a world, you have to create the assets. And there's lots of ways now to create a fast environment or fast character, metahumans being one of them, but still creating something wholly original with the quality that you want still takes time, still takes a lot of work, still takes a lot of money. So I think we have to remember that, you can't just crank out content because it's easy to do so. I think you got to sort of take your time and create something good out of the space. And that is something we want to do. We're taking our time. It could have gone faster, but creating really high quality work takes time. So that is a second hurdle, I think, that you can't sort of jump through just by magic.
It's definitely not a shortcut.
Yeah, exactly. There's no shortcut to good work. So that's my takeaway.
What would you say to a filmmaker or a creator who is considering using these tools?
I would say you should absolutely do so, and you should try to learn as much as you can online. There is lots of resources online to pick up film production. There's lots of resources online to learn virtual production. You have access to Unreal for free. You have access to a lot of resources for free, like assets from Megascans. You have, you have characters from MetaHumans. You have, kit bashes that you can put together to create an environment from scratch. So these things are readily available for free or for very low price, and the knowledge a lot of it is free. Right now, there's lots of people just wanting to share what they're learning. And this is what I'm doing now, but I would love to also be able to share once a project is done, how we did it. So the space is very open right now. There's a hunger to learn, and you have to take advantage of that. There's no real barrier to entry right now. Having a decent computer and just having the time and willingness to learn is enough. So, and the second step would be to surround yourself with a team that understands what you want to do. I think you got to start with yourself, but then you can't do everything by yourself. And that for me has always been the answer for my projects, is that I find people that believe in my vision, that can push this vision forward and get it to a better level than what I could do myself. So those two things have been crucial for me executing on my vision. And And again, the space is going to grow very soon, very fast. So if you're thinking about it, you should think about it now.
And would you say virtual production is an evolution or a revolution?
I think it's both. I think, virtual production as a technology has existed for a number of years under like different forms. It was a green screen back in the 90s. It was just James Cameron doing Avatar, when I think he was one of the first to do sort of mocap with an actual environment behind him that he could see live on set. So these things have existed. It's just evolving into this new form of real-time production that now is opening the door to a lot more artists. Like, you don't need to be James Cameron and what a digital to be able to do something in the space anymore. And I think that is going to be the revolution in terms of the type of content, the type of people that can create stuff like this. So I think that's going to open a huge sort of gateway for people to dreams bigger things, to create bigger things. And I think like all of these young people coming up right now are going to be sort of bringing that breath of fresh air into virtual production. So that is the human revolution, I think, is going to come based on that. And the technology is an evolution of something that's been existing for 20, 30 years now.
And where do you see this going in the next 5 years?
I think it's going to become a lot. I think it's going to become a new standard. Right now, there are still companies that see virtual production as not good enough in terms of, you place it next to a traditional CG shot. There's still going to be differences. There's still going to be quality differences. But as the technology evolves, as Unreal 5 comes out, as more people learn how to treat that image, I think it'll become indistinguishable from one another. And once that happens, basically people will have to accept it. ILM, big companies now are embracing Unreal as a sort of side tool to their arsenal, but smaller studios will probably embrace it as their main tool. One thing that I can see being sort of a comparison is DaVinci Resolve. I've been working with Blackmagic for a number of years, and I remember Blackmagic back in the day when they had just bought Resolve, and it was still sort of a very niche software, being seen as a tool for amateurs, cameras for amateurs, and now Resolve is becoming sort of this behemoth in the industry. There's a lot more people just using DaVinci Resolve as their main editing, finishing tool. And it's taken, 5-6 years for that to happen. So I think the same thing is going to happen with Unreal and virtual production. I think once the technology matures and once the artists are able to get the quality that they want, it'll just become a new standard that people are going to embrace. And I think that's going to take 3 to 5 years to happen.
And you're excited about that?
I mean, it is. I'm very excited to be early on. I'm still early, even though there's lots of people already doing this. But to be part of this new wave is always exciting. You feel like you're, at the crest of a wave, and you're just riding it until the sunset, right? So that's very exciting, and I think I'm connecting with people like me, indie filmmakers who are doing the same things as me. And we're all excited what this allows us to do. And we all have these amazing projects that, when they show me their stuff, I'm like, holy moly. And we're all creating different things, but in a way that we could not have created before. They've created worlds that are extremely impressive with very limited means. And I think that's just a very exciting time to be in.